The restaurant glowed with soft golden light, the kind that made everything look warmer than it really was. Families laughed, couples leaned across tables, and the aroma of grilled dishes floated through the air. At a small corner table near the window sat a man in a tailored suit, his posture straight, his expression unreadable. He wasn't just another customer, his presence carried a quiet authority, the kind that made people notice him without understanding why. Beside him, perched on a booster seat, was his little girl, no older than 7, her hair tied into uneven pigtails that bounced as she swung her legs and giggled at her own little jokes. She picked up a fry, dipped it clumsily into ketchup, and glanced around with the bright curiosity only a child could have. Her father, the kind of man who spent his days in meetings and boardrooms, softened when she laughed. He rarely let his walls down for anyone else, but for her, his smile came easily. Across the room, at a quiet table pressed against the far wall, sat a young woman. Her back was straight, her hands folded in her lap, and in front of her was nothing but a half-filled glass of water. Her clothes were clean but worn, the fabric faded from too many washes, and though she tried to look composed, her eyes betrayed her. Every time a server passed with steaming plates of food, her gaze followed just a little too long. She would quickly look away, pretending she wasn't staring, as though she could will her hunger into silence. Her stomach gave a faint growl, loud enough that she pressed a hand against it in shame. She tried to distract herself by sipping the water, but her eyes kept drifting back to the food others were enjoying, the sizzling plates, the laughter, the abundance. She bit the inside of her lip, forcing herself to remain still, to appear calm, even as her pride burned inside her chest. What she didn't know was that someone had already noticed. A pair of innocent eyes, brighter than all the lights in the restaurant, had been watching her quietly. The little girl tilted her head, frowning slightly, her small heart recognizing something that adults often overlooked. The little girl kept sneaking glances, her fork hovering in the air as though she had forgotten about her own food. She wasn't watching the waiters or the families around the manumrea. Her eyes were fixed on the young woman sitting alone, her hands wrapped around the glass of water like it was her only shield. The girl tilted her head, her small brows furrowed the way they did whenever she was trying to understand something bigger than herself. "Daddy," she whispered softly, tugging at his sleeve. He looked down from his phone, his sharp eyes narrowing just slightly, sensing the seriousness in her voice. She leaned closer, her voice almost secretive. "She looks hungry, a broken bar. Can I share my food with her?" Her father blinked, caught off guard. For a man used to handling million-dollar deals and tough boardroom negotiations, this simple question was one he wasn't prepared for. He followed his daughter's gaze, turning his head toward the far table. She was the girl with the tired but graceful posture, her shoulders pulled back as though holding the weight of invisible battles. She wasn't begging, she wasn't asking anyone for help, but her quiet desperation was clear to him now. He noticed how her eyes lingered on the plates being carried past, how she tightened her grip on the glass each time laughter rose from other tables, as if reminding herself not to crumble. His chest tightened unexpectedly. It had been years since anything had touched him like this. He was a man who had learned to keep his world controlled, neat, and distant. Yet here he was, moved by a stranger who hadn't said a single word. The little girl tugged again, her innocent eyes wide with urgency. "Daddy, please." "She looks like she hasn't eaten." "I have enough to share." There was no hesitation in her tone, no thought of pride or consequence, just pure, childlike kindness. For a moment, he simply watched his daughter. He thought of the lessons he wanted her to grow up with, the values he wanted her to carry: strength, kindness, dignity. And in that instant, he realized he couldn't just sit there and pretend not to notice. He placed his phone face down on the table, his decision made. Slowly, he rose from his seat, his daughter sliding down from her chair to clasp his hand eagerly. Conversations around them dimmed, a subtle hush falling as the powerful man in the suit moved through the restaurant, not toward an associate, not toward a business partner, but toward the lonely girl at the corner table. The clinking of glasses and hum of conversations faded as the man and his little girl stopped at the corner table. The young woman looked up in surprise, her fingers tightening around her glass as if bracing herself for a heartbeat. Fear flashed in her eyes. So was she about to be asked to leave, humiliated for taking up space where she didn't belong? But then the little girl, still holding her father's hand, leaned forward and placed a few golden fries onto the empty plate in front of her. "Here," she said softly, her small smile as warm as sunlight. "You can eat with us. Daddy says no one should be hungry." Her voice carried across the silence of the room, so innocent and pure it disarmed every watching eye. The woman blinked, caught between gratitude and pride. Her throat tightened, and she opened her mouth to protest, to say she was fine. But the child's eyes are so open, so genuine, made the words dissolve on her tongue. Instead, her vision blurred with tears she hadn't meant to shed. She whispered a trembling, "Thank you," her voice breaking in a way that made even the strongest hearts in the room falter. The CEO pulled out the chair opposite her, his movements calm, deliberate. "We'd be honored if you joined us," he said, his deep voice steady but softened by something rare, sincerity. He wasn't offering pity, he was offering dignity. His daughter clapped happily, sliding into the seat beside the woman, already chatting as though they had known each other forever. Around the restaurant, people exchanged quiet glances. A few looked down, ashamed of their earlier indifference. The servers paused, watching a man known for power and wealth choose kindness instead. The air itself seemed to shift, a lighter, gentler as the three of them shared a table that, moments before, had held only loneliness. For the young woman, it was more than food. It was the first time in a long time that someone had seen her, not as a burden, not as a shadow in the corner, but as a person worth sitting beside. And as she smiled through her tears at the little girl who had reached out with fries and a heart full of innocence, she realized this night was not just about filling her stomach, it was about filling the emptiness she had almost grown used to.